Welcome to Films and Stuff with your hosts, Pete Mitchell and Ethan Hunt.
Okay, Pete. So, last week we teased our audience that we would both be going to see Spider-Man No Way Home. We both seen it. You saw it first. And you didn't give me any spoilers, and now I saw it, so we can talk about it at length, spoilers with spoilers included. So I have to say, before I go into asking you how you rank it, you did tell me that it was exceptional even before I saw it. I think that's the only real feedback you gave me, is that you would be happy to see it a second time, and you gave me some of the box office details. So tell me, it exceeded your expectations. Is that right?
Yes, only in the sense that I had no expectations.
Oh.
It was one of the few movies of today's day and age where I went out of my way not to see any trailers, because there were rumors flying about who was returning, who wasn't returning. I saw the first teaser trailer and that was it. So I didn't want to get it spoiled. I didn't want to know who else was coming or wasn't coming back into the film. And I'm glad I did. And I stand by my assessment.
Yeah.
I still think it's one of the best.
So we were making the joke, which probably isn't our joke, but we'll take credit for it. And the joke was, do we have to see Spider-Man 1, 2, and 3, Amazing Spider-Man 1 and 2, and the new Tom Holland Spider-Man 1 and 2 in order to understand Spider-Man 3 No Way Home? And as you said it, the answer is kinda yeah. You don't have to, but the answer is kinda yeah, right?
It really is helpful.
Yeah.
It really is helpful. This is truly the Avengers Infinity War and Avengers Endgame of the Spider-Verse. And it really is a Spiderverse. We can now
It is a Spiderverse.
Call it a Spiderverse.
It is a Spiderverse. And I think the way that I saw these was, you and I are both huge Marvel fans and film fans, but, the Spider-Man and the Amazing Spider-Man really kind of turned me off to the standalone Spider-Man films. So I saw the first Spider-Man with Tom Holland, and then I didn't see Homecoming until very late, probably about a month ago, and it was only because you told me that it was exceptional. So I really got to see more of the timeline in terms of Homecoming, No Way Home, within a short period of time. So I found the continuity great, and I really loved the first part of the film, actually, because I thought that was a really accurate depiction of Peter Parker coming back from this big thing with Mysterio, and how the world, the city, social media, his peers, everyone kind of, viewed him, demonized him. I thought that first part was really quite good, actually.
Yeah, I agree. I think it felt natural that way. That some people would love him,
very natural.
Some people would hate him, some people would side with Mysterio. Like Hannibal Buress has always been like a low-key hilarious part of
Coach Wilson.
The Spider-Verse. He was very funny in Spider-Man 1. He was very funny in Spider-Man 2. So, it's there. You saw, you see him as like, I believe in Mysterio. You're a war criminal, etc. It landed, right? Because that's 100% how some people would behave.
Yeah. I think him and Mr. Harrington, right, had very, very small roles, but they were pretty powerful in terms of that one scene where they appeared together, and it obviously highlights the vast differences in terms of how Peter Parker / Spider-Man was viewed at the time. So I love the beginning of the film. Of course, it's unavoidable that we're going to talk about the reunion of the three Peter Parkers, right?
Yeah.
Andrew Garfield, and who's my first guy?
Toby Mcguire,
right? So I mean, it's inevitable that this was, I thought, exceptional. I did not know this was coming. I was like you. I steered away from trailers and the gossip sites, I know that there were, in retrospect, I know that there were some rumors about all three reappearing.
Yeah.
Both of them kind of shot it down with varying levels of gusto, shall we say. But yeah, I mean, obviously, where there's smoke, there's fire, I think, in terms of Marvel. But I'm happy that I did not know that all three were going to be there. So I thought that was a really pleasant surprise. And obviously the nostalgia, even though I said at the beginning that I wasn't a fan of the first, two incarnations of Spider-Man, I really love that all three of them appeared together on screen at the same time. I thought it was exceptional.
And what I like, so there's a lot of layers to unpack with this. First, I agree with you. It was a surprise in the sense that, like you, I had heard a few rumors, but then like Andrew Garfield has been like on a tour. I think he was promoting his last movie or his most recent movie, Tick Tick Boom, and he went out of his way because everyone was asking him, "Are you in the new Spider-Man movie? Are you in the Spider-Man movie?" And he went out of his way, like very vehemently denying it, right? And I thought that, man, if one of them's not coming back, then neither of them are coming back. Because it makes no sense to have villains from both previous iterations and only have one of the two Spider-Men come back. So I was like, okay, well, if he's not coming back, then I think, and then I thought to myself, what is the added value, not in terms of the Spider-Man, but like, why would you want to take that away from Tom Holland? This is his trilogy. It's his movie. And I'm pleased to say that despite both of them coming back, this is 100% still a Tom Holland Spider-Man movie. In the sense that each of the other Spider-Man brings something to the table that helps Tom Holland be the Spider-Man he's meant to be, right? Yeah. And they all provide him with comfort. And, when you lose... So the other critical part of this film was, obviously we lose Aunt May, right? She gets taken out by the Green Goblin.
It had to happen, though. As far as I feel, though, it really had to happen, right? I mean, there needs to be some arcs, and we can talk about the arcs, but, I mean, even though she was beloved, and we all love Marissa Tomei, it kind of needed to happen.
What's interesting is in the previous Spider-Man movies, iterations, the arc was around Uncle Ben. And in Tom Holland's Spider-Man movie, you don't see any Uncle Ben because that's happened supposedly, theoretically, if it's happened in the past, right? Or that's at least what we've assumed, right? That he's Spider-Man now. He understands that with great power comes great responsibility. What's beautiful is that Aunt May replaces Uncle Ben in this timeline. It's her death that really makes him understand the mantle of what it means to be Spider-Man and, more importantly, what his anonymity means, right? Which wasn't really a problem previously, or it was very casual about how many people knew he was Spider-Man, right? And I think that's an MCU problem, but the reality is like no one's identity is really hidden in the MCU. Everyone knows who every Avenger is, or and their alternate identities. Whereas in the comic books, that's always been like a driving factor for these guys is I need to hide my identity. So I think what's good about this, what I thought was really good about the two Spider-Men was Toby Mcguire comes in.
How did you find Toby Mcguire's like screen presence? Did you find him to be enthusiastic about this? Not enthusiastic?
So this is the thing, right? He comes off, if you look at it very objectively and without any emotion, it looks like he's just there for a paycheck, right? There's a couple scenes where he's not really super happy. He's not super smiley. He's not got any quips. But then you have to think about
almost as though like he's, I mean, I agree with you. I kind of felt the same way. Like he was cajoled or forced to be in it. And he was kind of like, I've kind of outgrown this. Like he doesn't wear the costume at the beginning.
That's the whole point. I think for me, when I look at it, the way I look at it is that Toby Mcguire's Spider-Man is the old grizzled Spider-Man. He's the one who's been through the fire. He's been through it all before. He understands it.
He's a member of the Avengers.
Yeah, but he gets it in the sense that he understands.
Are you in a band?
I mean, we'll get to that. There were some really funny parts to this, right?
Yeah.
But like, he comes in and his role is to say, look, I'm the oldest. Or he doesn't say it, but it's very much implied. I'm the oldest. I've been through the most. I'm dealing with the greatest of the villains, which is Green Goblin, right? Mm-hmm. And also, I'm not the young man I once was, but that doesn't mean I'm not Spider-Man, right? And he's the one who's there providing like guidance and tips and a little bit of strategy kind of feel. That's the feeling. Yeah. And Andrew Garfield is the one who, who's the Spider-Man that's kind of in a dark place, right? Where he's saying, look, I lost my version of MJ in the second one, Emma Stone's character, right? And where he goes, I'm not pulling back my punches anymore.
And the second one,
right? So you see what Spider-Man has the potential to be in terms of an older veteran. You see what Spider-Man has the potential to be in terms of the guy who's jaded by it all because he's lost so much. Does that right? And so this is kind of like this journey is a little bit of it provides closure for all three of them, right? This movie. It provides closure for Toby Mcguire because they finally take down Norman Osborn. It provides closure for Andrew Garfield because he saves Zendaya. Yeah. And oh my God, that sold it. Really, it sold me on Andrew Garfield because he saves of all the characters and of all the actors, right?
Very
you always
felt
that despite the fact that his movies didn't do well, Andrew Garfield loved being Spider-Man. Right? Yeah. His promo stuff with the talk show hosts outside, you could just tell he loved being Spider-Man. And it was just, he was in an unfortunate situation where they filmed these movies right after the terrible Spider-Man 3 with Toby Mcguire. They weren't critically well received. They weren't well received by the fans. Yeah. So it was just a shame. And maybe that's a product of circumstance.
Yeah. I thought that Andrew Garfield, I don't want to say he carried the movie, but I thought that he was instrumental to this movie being exceptional. I think his levity. I thought he was the funniest of the Spider-Mans, and I thought that he was obviously the most emotional. Right. He was a little bit of a wreck, but I thought that those two sides of him were really instrumental in rehabilitating his reputation as a Spider-Man. Because we kind of forget about Garfield. We're like, those are just two miserable films, I think that rehabilitated him, at least in my mind, as a Spider-Man. And I think it really carried that film during the, the three Peter Parker, scenes.
I agree. So this, for me, it was like, I thought that was really, I thought it was done exceptionally well. And despite how big both the actors are relative to Tom Holland, this was still 100% a Tom Holland film, right? You get to see his growth. And what's interesting is that I actually think that this entire trilogy is the origin of Spider-Man. Even though Spider-Man already exists, even though he already has a suit, even though he's a member of the Avengers, all of that, it's really, for me, his story of how he becomes the Spider-Man that we all know and love from the comics and from the TV shows and maybe even from the other movies. You see the vulnerability and you see him broken down and beaten up. And you see a little bit of that in Spider-Man 1 when he's trapped by the Vulture in that warehouse. Yeah. But you really see that the most here when he's emotionally destroyed by Aunt May dying, right? And because him blaming himself, right? So I think...
I have to say, I think you're absolutely right. And I think that this movie, for me, did two things that I am forever respectful of the MCU writers and creators for, which is it finally made sense of these three different standalone, Spider-Man Peter Parkers. And I cannot say enough good things about that. It's superb. It's brilliant. It made my life a lot easier. Honestly, just not enough good things can be said about it, but I think that summarized it. And the second part is I agree that this has really made, the Tom Holland Peter Parker. I mean, we met him, he was supposed to be in high school, and he was always like, yes, sir, and, so polite to, Tony Stark, and so polite, even to, Doctor Strange. But now we see he's kind of graduated a little bit, and he's kind of man down.
Right. He's become his own, right?
No more. Yeah, because that shtick was going to get old after a while, right? It was cool for a while. And this kind of like pushed him to, much further.
I agree. So I think that's very crucial element of, again, the growth of the Spider-Man, which is to say he's no longer that fanboy, right? Because he's in it. He's a part of the universe. He's now fought against a serious group of people.
Mm-hmm.
I think this was a very superb way of ending this trilogy.
Yeah.
Now, I alluded to it earlier. I know we spoke about it a little offline. It looks like they're planning another trilogy, Sony MCU. I think there's a lot.
Can I say one more thing that they did that was important though in the character?
Of course.
Before we go into where we're going with the MCU, which is they straightened out a lot of the personal relationships as well. The Marissa Tomei, Jon Favreau, Happy Hogan kind of romance, courtship. I'm glad that it's sad to see anyone pass away, but I'm happy that this is kind of like gone now. That was a little bit of an awkward dance for a while. The fact that they've distanced a little bit with MJ and Ned, I think is good as well, because again, those three kind of like best friends, that was something that I also felt like it played its course. Maybe there's going to be something in the future and that's okay. But I think that the distance that it gave, Peter Parker from, his two kind of like high school friends, I think that's a good thing. Otherwise it was just kind of like the same thing, for 4 in a row or 5 in a row. So I'm really pleased about that. But now we get to the point, which is where does it go from here? And that's where I think this falls. There's another area, but I think that's where this falls a little bit short, which is it's not really clear what is the direction or what's left for Spider-Man, right?
There's a lot of places it could go. I know we spoke about it a while ago. I thought they were going to do a Sinister Six movie. I'm less sold on the idea of a Sinister Six movie now.
Yeah.
Only because now they just had a movie where 3 Spider-Men fought against 6 villains, right? Or 5 villains, or whatever the number of villains was. There were so many of them. And now the question is, do you want to see another tentpole trilogy ending with a Sinister Six? I know there are different characters in the Sinister Six, but no. I mean, other than the fact that
I don't know if that's a rhetorical question, if that's a real question, but
well, there you go. So I'm less keen on that. What I think they can do, and given what I've heard, so Tom Holland was like, oh, I want to take a break from acting for a while. There's a lot of things they can do. So one is they can introduce, now that they've got the idea of, or now that they've opened up the concept of the Spiderverse, right? And if you watched Into the Spiderverse, the animated film Sony released a couple years ago, which, by the way, if you haven't seen, it's a masterpiece. Honestly, it is one of the best movies, especially Spider-Man movies, I've ever seen.
Really?
It's phenomenal. And that movie centers around Miles Morales. And that is someone I think they can introduce into the MCU. And the second one is, it also introduces the character of Spider-Gwen, which is Gwen Stacy, which is Emma Stone's character from Andrew Garfield's universe. So in one universe, she becomes the new quote-unquote Spider-Man or Spider-Woman or whatever.
Right.
And her defining moment is losing Peter Parker rather than Peter Parker losing Gwen Stacy. So it's a very, the opportunities that way are endless. So they can do that. And then if you do a Miles Morales, you've got a couple, you've got different villains like the Prowler. You've got a couple, Kingpin is a significant part of that storyline.
I mean, Kingpin was so prominent in, where do we just see Kingpin now, right?
With
Clint Barton, Hawkeye. We just saw him in Hawkeye, right? So, I mean, that seems like a very natural potential crossover as well.
That's a potential there because Kingpin is like a prominent villain for Spider-Man and Daredevil. Then you've got...
and we saw Daredevil as well. Underrated.
What a great cameo. For me, that was actually the best cameo of the film.
I feel like it was so subtle as to almost not be. It was just very strange how subtle it was, right? I mean, it was
such a blink and you miss it moment, in the sense that if you're not a fan of the MCU, if you haven't watched any of the MCU shows,
you
or
absolutely
in this case,
would
the
not
Netflix
have picked up on
MCU
it
shows,
at all.
you would not have understood, and you would have just been like, "Oh, that's weird. That a blind lawyer can catch something."
They would have been like, "Is he blind?" And then secondly, like, "How did he catch the brick?" And then it just moved on from there, right? But I agree that was
exactly.
It was very subtle. I mean, it was a nice Easter egg, but
blew my mind, because I wasn't expecting that. And what that does is it 100% validates the MCU Netflix universe into the MCU cinematic universe, the actual cinematic universe. And it's interesting because just 2 or 3 days before I saw the film, I saw that Marvel confirmed that Charlie Cox was coming back as Daredevil in the MCU. I was like, oh, that's brilliant news. Yeah. I didn't realize that they were doing that to set to release that news to set up the cameo in Spider-Man, right? Because that makes a lot of sense now that they did that. Mm-hmm. So I was very pleased with that. I thought that was done very well. So you've got where were we? Spider-Man and what else? Spider-Gwen. You've got a ton of different Spider-Man. In terms of villains, you've got characters that we still haven't seen in Tom Holland's. You've got
where are we going with Venom?
So I was just about to say,
I was absolutely expecting Venom would somehow be integrated into this.
So you saw the mid-credit sequence, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So where we see Tom Holland. If you haven't seen it, have you seen Venom 2?
Yes.
Okay, so just a quick recap. The end credit sequence of Venom 2 is Tom Hardy gets warped into Peter Parker's universe. We didn't realize it was Peter Parker's universe, Tom Holland's universe.
And we see him with Happy Hogan.
And we didn't know that. We just know that he gets just see that he gets transformed somewhere else, or transported somewhere else, right? We now understand, right, based on what we've seen in this film, Tom Hardy at the end of Venom 2 gets transported to Tom Holland's Peter Parker universe, and then at the end of at the mid-credit sequence of this movie, he gets transported back. But while he gets transported back, a bit of the Venom symbiote is left on this planet or on this universe. Not such a fan of that, to be honest. Not a super fan of that.
Yeah, I have to say, that's if we're picking this movie apart, which we're apt to do, I give a lot of credit in terms of streamlining the 3 different Spidey universes, and that overrides any criticisms I have. But my 2 criticisms are, 1, I thought that the villains were really recycled. And I understand why, because everyone kind of came into this universe. But again, I felt that was really a little bit dull. I mean, Willem Dafoe, yes, he's an amazing
fantastic
Goblin, right?
Bad guy.
Yeah. But we've seen that. You know, Doc Ock, right? We've seen that before. Jamie Foxx playing the same kind of guy, but a little bit different and more buff. The same thing. And I mean, Sandman was given very short shrift.
So was the Lizard.
To be honest, I didn't really recall. And I just felt like they were thrown in there. None of them really compelling. It didn't really kind of follow the storyline so much. And I know that when you're watching a superhero MCU, you've got to, go with the flow a little bit. But I mean, these villains were all like taken care of by the respective Spider-Mans. Now they're kind of back and they weren't taken care of. Who else came back? It just kind of opens up for me this Pandora's box in terms of, okay, well, who else is back? Like, is MJ back? Is there more than one MJ? Is Gwen back? Is Uncle Ben back? Like, it just seemed like, so I was expecting more, and I felt like that was just kind of like pushed to the side, despite all the great thought given to the other parts.
I think they went with volume over new appeal in this one. And to be fair, not bad. I didn't mind it. I didn't mind it. My point I was trying to make was for 4, 5, and 6, there are a couple different villains that they can talk about or that they can explore. Yeah. So you've got Craven the Hunter.
Yeah.
Famously one of the bad guys Spider-Man has fought. You've got Hobgoblin, which we have kind of seen, but not really, with James Franco, but not quite sure. You've got Venom, who I thought really has not been done justice in any film. I don't think he's been done justice in the Venom cinematic universe.
A good guy now?
No.
Venom's a good guy now.
So in the comics, Venom starts off as a really bad guy, but then there's like, he's like an anti-hero. He's kind of like Wolverine, which is to say that he's not a good guy, but he's not a bad guy either. And he ends up fighting for the good guys in efforts of beating up the bad guys. That's why I'm not sure.
I feel like Kingpin, I mean,
no. So it's
or is it going to be something else from MCU?
So I think now at this point, Tom Holland's Spider-Man has made such a good name for itself that it doesn't require the help of the original MCU to help in terms of adding weight. I fully agree, and I fully understand why they added Iron Man to the first film and Nick Fury to the second. Is because you want to add a little bit of weight.
Yeah.
Vulture wasn't like, at least in the comics, wasn't like a really bad guy. And Mysterio definitely wasn't a premier villain in Spider-Man 2. You have to add a little bit of weight, and you do that by adding Sam Jackson, by adding Robert Downey Jr., by adding all these other characters, right? But now I think we're in a position where the movies can say, hey, you know what? We're going to do Craven. We're going to get a Skarsgård, or we're going to get some unknown actor to be that guy for us. We're going to do Venom, and we're not getting Tom Hardy to do it because we don't need it to be someone super, super famous, because we also want someone who can establish his own line of films in this MCU, right? So there's a lot of potential for them to bring in other bad guys. Or if they go with the Miles Morales route, we're going to go with Prowler. Before they cast Mahershala Ali as Blade, I thought he would have played an excellent Prowler.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah.
So, but there's so many characters that they could go for. Oh my God, they could do a deep cut, and they could make Wesley Snipes, who played the original Blade, as Prowler, which would be also very interesting. Right? So there's a lot of different characters that they can go for now, and the world opens up a little bit. They can even do his own version of Norman Osborn.
Yeah.
Right?
So, Pete, let me ask you something, though. If you're Tom Holland, I mean, we saw kind of this like one interview that's got a lot of press in terms of, how he said he's going through a midlife crisis. He wants to take some time off. Maybe that's just, the typical banter where he's doing it for contract negotiation purposes, or maybe he's just tired because he just got done and we caught him at the wrong moment, or maybe it's something more calculated. If you're Tom, where do you go from here? Like, are you excited about doing 3 more, or are you ready to kind of like move on and do some of the other stuff that you saw Andrew Garfield do? Like, what's your headspace?
Look, having a franchise in your back pocket is always a good idea because it pays the bills, right? And that allows you to do it allows you to do creatively whatever you want to do, so that you don't have to that you can take all the risks that you want, right? He's also only 25 years old, man. At 25 years old, you don't mind being in a franchise. When Daniel Craig said, oh my God, I'd rather slit my wrist than do another James Bond movie at the end of Skyfall, you kind of get it. The guy's in his 50s. He's doing these heavily action sequenced movies. It's not easy, right? I can't imagine it being easy. When you're 25, when you're at the prime of your life, when you're in good shape, it sounds a bit weird to say, I don't want to do these. I'm having a midlife crisis. I get it. He's been working for 15 years nonstop. It's not easy for anyone, right? I mean, especially in a movie, especially in an industry where you get no privacy, right?
I think the two things that also make Spider-Man challenging is that, unlike Avengers, where you're not in every shot and every scene, the standalone Spider-Man, you're working a lot. You're in every scene. And I think the second part of that is that Marvel, given how much control they put over this, I imagine that the filming, I would expect, I'm making this up, but I would expect that it's more fun to film James Bond scenes again and again and again than to stand in front of the green screen with all these electrodes on your head
up and a wire,
and say like, okay, now pretend you just like fell to the ground. okay, pretend you fell to the ground. Pretend you fell to the ground, And after a while, you've got to be like, man, like, can't we get a stunt double? Like, this is all CGI'd anyway. Like, do I really have to do this again and again and again all day? And now I'm getting, I feel like that's got to be a very, although it seems like a first world problem. It doesn't seem difficult or unpleasant. I can see that that's not an exciting thing to wake up to, is just doing these small little landing sequences or turning sequences or flipping sequences repeatedly. You don't maybe feel like you're actually acting. You just feel like you're going through a lot of, calisthenics. So I can see maybe from his perspective, that's now after 3 films and all the Avengers films that he's done, no longer, or has lost its allure.
Yeah, I understand that. Again, I empathize, but at the same time, like, the practical side of me is like, but you're 25. Yeah, I mean, this is the time of, if you want to retire early, go retire early.
I agree.
But, you're 25, you're Spider-Man, you're killing it at the box office, you're making more money than any other Spider-Man movies, like, and you're part of this MCU, like, suck it up.
Did you think at any time during this film that any of the Spider-Mans would die or switch places?
No, I didn't think so, because you can't have Spider-Man die and go back to his universe dead. And more importantly, you can't lose Aunt May and a Spider-Man in the same movie.
So, I mean, when you say this, that makes a lot of sense. But I have to say, for more than a moment, I kind of thought Toby Mcguire would die when he got stabbed. And it's not really clear how badly he got stabbed and how he lives from that. But I kind of thought that they would have him die because he is the elder statesman, and it just kind of seemed like it would wrap things up cleanly. And then I thought that Andrew Garfield would stay in the universe because they kind of dispensed of all the bad guys, right? They cured them or so forth. And I didn't know if they were all going to be sent back to their universe or stay. But I kind of thought that maybe Andrew Garfield will stay and will either have a tag team Spider-Man, or for purely business purposes, they say to Tom Holland, look, dude, stop bitching about, retiring, or let's have some reasonable contract negotiations here. Ha ha ha, we've got a backup for you,
Yeah, so I think that Miles Morales is who he's going to tag team with. I either think it's going to be Miles Morales, or I think it's going to be Gwen Stacy. It's one or the other. I doubt it's going to be Gwen Stacy because her backstory, unless they alter it significantly.
And who is the Gwen Stacy?
So that's the thing, is we haven't seen Gwen Stacy in this universe, right? So theoretically, it's possible if they change her background or if they change her thing. I think Miles Morales is much more reasonable because we saw Prowler in the first movie that was played by Don Glover. So I think it's more likely we see Miles Morales, and I think it's also, this is maybe me being very cynical, but this is also plays into the MCU's diversity planning and Disney's diversity planning, because you have a young half Latin, half African American child, man, boy, whatever you want to call them, playing a superhero on the big screen. It's very it's a very enticing idea, right? Like so I think that in terms of the diversity pledge that Disney's got going on, that adds a lot of value to them.
But I agree. I mean, Gwen Stacy would be interesting, but I mean, she hasn't been introduced anywhere, right?
Yeah. Which is, again, why I think it's going to be Miles Morales. And for me, for example, I'm more excited about it being Miles Morales. You have a Spider-Man with a different set of powers, different set of circumstances, and it'll allow Tom Holland to play his mentor, right? Because that's what Peter Parker does for Miles Morales, is that he kind of looks after him and, shows him the ropes, as it were. So
when we leave this film, we get to, as you mentioned, the credits, right? And we get the sneak peek of what's happening now with Doctor Strange, right?
Yes.
Okay. Where's MCU going from here? Like,
I think they're going into the multiverse. And
is Spider-Man going to be a big part of that, or how does he fit into that?
Into what?
into the multiverse.
Yeah, so I think it's not a Spider-Man issue. I think it's an MCU issue. I think what you've got now is you've got Disney who's acquired the X-Men franchise, the Fantastic Four franchise. You've got a lot of characters that they haven't introduced yet, but you want to introduce them. Mm-hmm. And you don't have an easy way to justify why the Fantastic Four weren't helpful during any of Thanos attacks or during the alien invasion.
Yeah.
Or why the X-Men weren't around helping when they could have been, right?
Can you tell me why?
Well, yeah, my opinion is that they're going to be in another universe that crosses over, and they're going to be stranded onto this planet or this universe. And so, like, there's allusions to a lot that could be done. I'm not saying they will do it. I'm just saying that it opens up the door to that.
So when we look back on this Spider-Man 3, No Way Home, can we say that this has kind of been transformative in terms of MCU using it, to reposition, what they're doing?
Yeah. I think the beginning of the transformation is going to be done with Spider-Man, or at least the opening of this door. And I think really it's going to be Doctor Strange 2 that blows the door off the hinges and confirms the MCU's intentions of maintaining some kind of multiverse. Yeah. Whether that means that freely allows people to get into and out of this universe, what that does allow you to do is bring back other Spider-Man stars like Andrew Garfield or Toby Mcguire. Or even other X-Men stars from the previous movies, like Hugh Jackman, who to date, not to date, he's the only one who's played Wolverine. I think has done such an excellent job as Wolverine. But then he said, "Look, I'm never coming back as Wolverine." And then he used to jokingly say, "Well, maybe if Disney makes it a part of the MCU." And now Disney's made it part of the MCU. Do I think he should come back? No. Because he had a phenomenal run. He ended it beautifully with Logan. He ended it beautifully with Logan. Why reopen that can of worms, right? Let a younger person come in. Let someone who's a little bit more comic accurate come in. Yeah. Hugh Jackman is a very handsome, fit, tall guy, and like
there's very little levity, right, with him. He's not funny. He can be unintentionally funny and have a few quips,
But Wolverine isn't really a quip guy, but at the same time, Wolverine is a short, not stout, but he's like a bulky, short guy who's not known for being a handsome guy, right? And I'm not saying that, I'm not saying, Hollywood is going to hire an ugly actor, because there is no such thing as an ugly actor. But what I'm saying is that Hugh Jackman is he's a very good looking guy. So it seems like if you compare him to the comics, like
you're really quite complimentary of Hugh Jackman today.
His portrayal of Wolverine, I think, is excellent. But when I first heard he was going to be Wolverine, I was a bit shocked. And we're talking now 20 years ago, because that's not the Wolverine of the comics, right? Who I thought did a really good job but got shafted was the guy who played Cyclops. Oh my God, James Marsden.
Oh yeah.
He, I thought, was very much embodied the idea of what Cyclops was like, not just in the comics, but in the movies based on the comics. And he got shafted in the movies, because that's the problem with an ensemble movie cast.
Not everyone can have the lead. Yeah.
You get to a tipping point where you have when you have too many good-looking stars, someone's going to get shafted, and it was him who got the shaft.
Eternals. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there you go. You either have 15 minutes of everybody on screen and you don't get any depth, or you get like a good amount of depth for like 3 characters and that's it, right? Which is exactly what happened. Famke Janssen, Hugh Jackman, Patrick Stewart, Ian McKellen, and that's it. Everybody else kind of got shafted.
When is Doctor Strange 2 coming out?
So I think we'll see. To be determined. To be determined what they do.
Right, so when we look at,
but I'm excited.
When we look at the MCU release schedule, what is next? Do we really have to wait until May? That's the next film coming out?
I think that's May 2022.
Can we look at MCU release calendar? May seems like a long time, right?
I'm pretty sure it is.
So what about Well, we saw Shang-Chi, we saw Doctor Strange. What about Thor: Love and Thunder?
I think that's
Black
I'm not
Panther.
sure when it is, but I thought it was November of next year.
Oh, maybe this is pushing it back. I mean, it's all been.
Thor is July.
Yeah, I see Thor: Love and Thunder, Black Panther 2, and Captain Marvel all coming out spring, summer 2022 in various order, right?
Captain Marvel 2, I think, is 23 now.
So these all got shifted.
Yeah, everything got shifted, and it's a bit hard to know exactly what the orders are now.
Yeah.
But my understanding is that we're looking at, in terms of pure MCU movies, we're looking at not Captain Marvel. We're looking at Doctor Strange in May, or let's put it this way: Doctor Strange, then
Thor. There's also Morbius.
Yeah, I was about to say Thor, and then we've got Black Panther 2. I don't know what they're doing with Black Panther 2 at all. I have no idea. And Morbius comes in, I don't know when, but that comes in, and I'm not excited about it at all, but they're integrating that into the Sony MCU.
Yeah. Wakanda Forever. Wow. I'm on this website called ncuschedule.com. Shout out to those folks.
Oh, well, that's a convenient
Shout out to those folks. This is what they tell me. And it's not clear when this has last been, although this is pretty recent because it says Hawkeye streaming now on Disney Plus, which is true. And it says Spider-Man No Way Home in theaters now. But then it incorrectly says Eternals January 2022. That's obviously not the case. And then it says Morbius end of January 2022, which is very possible. Doctor Strange May 2022. Ms. Marvel, summer 2022, Thor: Love and Thunder, July 2022, Black Panther: Wakanda Forever, November 2022, Guardians of the Galaxy.
No, that'll be much later because they haven't even started filming it yet. So
and then they've got Moon Knight, She-Hulk.
Oh yeah, sorry. So yeah, you're right. There's a couple of TV shows that we haven't talked about. Moon Knight should be coming out. She-Hulk is going to be coming out.
Yep.
So there's still a few TV shows to go.
Ant-Man and the Wasp is a year from now, July 2023. Blade, to be determined 2023. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot coming out. But if we're looking at what's next, it's somehow Morbius, Doctor Strange, Thor, in some type of order in the next 6 months.
Morbius could theoretically be one of the bad guys that Spider-Man follows. I mean, this prior to watching Spider-Man 3, I thought they were building up to a Sinister Six with Morbius, Venom, and all these other guys, right? Vulture and so forth. Now I'm less. I'm not saying they won't do that. They could still do a bad guy team up film. I'm just less enthused about the idea, given we've seen something similar to that.
If you're Sony though, I mean, wouldn't you want to start to introduce as much new intellectual property as you can to try to spin off and create your own little Sony universe?
Well, so that's what they're kind of doing. Yeah. So they've got that a little bit with Venom. They're doing that with Morbius.
Yeah.
So this is where things get a little dicey because now Venom, or at least a version of Venom is a part of the MCU. We haven't seen that version yet because all we saw was that glob that was left on the bar, right?
Yeah.
I saw the Morbius trailer, and I'm pretty sure I saw Michael Keaton's Vulture in the trailer. And if that's the case, that means that Morbius is a part of the MCU Sonyverse. So this is what I'm saying, is it gets a little dicey in the sense that it's a little bit of a mess on the Sony side. And to Marvel's credit, they've done what they could to clean it up. But, Sony is still insisting on making its Spider-Man spin-off films.
And why not, though, right? I mean, why not?
Well,
I mean, unless, you're right. I mean, if you look at the Sony, like roster of films, right? I mean, it's a little bit bleak as well. Sony's, the only thing that Sony can really hang its hat on right now is Spider-Man and the Spiderverse. And I think it has to milk this and try to do exactly what Marvel did, which is try to find some second-level characters and try to give them some, compelling storylines, right?
Yeah. I think in terms of the Sony franchises, that's probably its best bet at the moment. And again, this Spider-Man release just proved it. To make $600 million in its first week is no laughing matter. Mm-hmm. It's probably going to cross $1 billion this weekend. Especially because it's the holiday weekend. So, I imagine between now and the end of the year, it makes at least another $600 million globally. It still hasn't even been released in China. So, it's got the potential to really make a significant amount of money, which is, a feather in the MCU cap to say we've made another $1 billion movie. And of course, in terms of Sony, it's a good financial feather for them because Sony as a film studio, not been doing too hot over the last 5-10 years. So they'll take whatever wins they can get.
Yeah. I mean, they've got Resident Evil out now, which is, I guess, something.
Is that a Sony movie?
Venom. Yep. So is Venom. Venom's a Sony movie. Ghostbusters is a Sony movie.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah. But apart from that, there's not a whole lot that, we know from, they make a lot of movies. Some of the movies are quite good, but like Peter Rabbit isn't really, carrying the franchise. And so, I think they've got to develop something. Sony's never been really like a franchise movie, right? They've done things like The Last Action Hero,
no, they did Men in Black, if I remember correctly. Men in Black.
Elysium, Groundhog Day, 2012. They've done for sure. Some absolutely beloved movies over the years, but they haven't been. They've been a movie production studio. They haven't been, this. They haven't been doing the sequels. They haven't been doing the, Bad Boys for Life. Maybe I think that was them as well. Charlie's Angels. I think that was them. Jumanji. I think that was them. So there's a few that they've done, but. I think that, now the opportunity to really tap into Spider-Man and these MCU or these Marvel characters that they have the rights to is where they're hopefully going to really develop something interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right about Men in Black. Okay, Pete, so where do we go from here?
In terms of Spider-Man or in terms of what?
In terms of anything. You tell me, where are we going from here?
Where are we going from here? I think in terms of our show, that's it for today in terms of Spider-Man. Yeah,
but I think there's a few things that we need to bring quickly, which is Matrix Revelations.
I saw that. I did see that.
Okay, so we definitely need to we did a breakdown last week of the Matrix trilogy. Now we've got Matrix Revelations. So we definitely need to have a
Resurrection.
It's Resurrection.
Yeah.
Not Revelations. Okay. Resurrection.
No.
So we definitely need to do a breakdown of that. And what shows are you watching?
At the moment, very few, because everyone's a little bit on hiatus. I've caught up on everything that I was watching. The Christmas holiday season, everyone's kind of a bit slow.
You're watching Witcher. You told me to watch Witcher.
I am. I haven't started season 2 yet. I saw season 1 a year ago when it first came out. I loved it. I'm planning on watching season 2 probably over the course of this week. I'm also planning. So just yesterday, The Wheel of Time finished. So I'm planning on watching Wheel of Time. Amazon Prime.
So have you watched it or have you not watched it?
I have not watched it, and I don't know anything about the show. It's been recommended to me, and that's it.
I also, you know what? I'm exactly the same place as you. It has been recommended to me, and you mentioned it to me, but then my brother also said he's watching it. But I have to say, apart from the name Wheel of Time, which maybe I can guess something about it, I don't know any single thing about it. I've never even heard of it until you two mentioned it to me. Can't tell you any characters. Male, female,
no clue.
Past, futuristic.
I don't even know who's starring in it. I have no idea.
Shall we watch it?
I think that's probably a good idea. It's only 8 episodes.
I think that's a good idea.
Hey, look, I'm going on the fact that your brother recommended Foundation, and I'm all in. So if your brother has recommended it, I'm in.
Okay. So should we do, there's 8 episodes in season 1, right?
Yeah.
Are they 30-minute episodes, 1-hour episodes?
1-hour episodes, yeah.
Okay. Do you think we can knock it out in a weekend?
Depends on how good it is, but yes, certainly. If it's very good, then yes. If it's a struggle, then no. And if it's terrible, I'll stop after the first episode.
Yeah, I feel like we're not going to stop after the first episode. I feel like we'll at least get it, like 2 or 3, just to kind of see. But
maybe
I
2 or 3.
I agree. I feel like
fair.
within the first episode, how about let's do this? Let's go watch the first episode. Let's come back. Let's do a breakdown of the first episode and decide. It would be better if we mutually agree or not, but let's decide if this is something that we should add to our watch list and continue on and try to binge it.
I think that is an excellent idea.
I'm in. So we have to let's just streamline something else. So we're going to do Wheel of Time streaming on Amazon Prime or Amazon Video, where we have to see Matrix. What else is coming out in cinemas? It's kind of Christmas season, New Year's season. Like usually there's a bunch of stuff. It's because we've already seen Spider-Man that we're not interested in Resident Evil. Is there anything out there that we need to see?
I don't think there is.
Or that's coming?
I don't think there is, or at least nothing that grabs my attention. I'm not interested in seeing West Side Story. I'm not interested in seeing Encanto, the new Pixar film. And I'm not interested in seeing...
What about the Kingsman?
Oh, that's interesting. I've heard some reviews have been mixed. I haven't seen anything about it. I saw one trailer, but that was like 2 years ago when it was first made.
What? I'm also a little bit confused about the Kingsmans. Right? There's so many kind of Kingsmen. But yeah.
Yeah, so this is a sequel that's actually a prequel. This is about the founding of that whole franchise.
Okay. I'm interested in that. I would definitely see that. I think, I agree with you. I'm not really interested in seeing West Side Story. And is there anything else big coming out? Because Top Gun 2 has been delayed, obviously. Mission Impossible has been delayed. And I'm not sure what else there is. Yeah.
Such a shame.
Okay. So let's definitely see Kingsman. But it's the Kings 'S man. Right.
Man. Exactly. Versus the Kingsmen, which
plural.
was, that organization.
Was there 2 Kingsmens, I want to think?
There was Kingsman and then the Kingsman Golden Circle or something like that. The one that that introduced the American counterpart.
Yes. Yeah. The guy in the cowboy hat and the bolo tie.
Who was it? Channing Tatum, I think?
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, Pedro Pascal and Channing Tatum.
Oh, yeah, Pedro Pascal. Yeah. Okay.
And then I think this week, actually, it's either this week or next week, the Book of Boba Fett is released.
Oh, yeah.
That is a must-watch.
It is a must-watch. That we have to definitely... we have to binge that one and talk about it, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
What about...
So that is probably on our next week's... assuming it comes out this week, that's probably on our next week's to-watch list.
I agree. What about... When is Batman coming out? The Batman.
Probably next year sometime?
2022, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like The Batman was teased, and that has to come out soon. Okay.
Yeah, well, it's been teased for 2 years now. I saw trailers. The first trailer I saw was in 2019. Then I saw another trailer for it in 2020.
Okay. So let's go watch.
They must have filmed it by now.
Wheel of Time. Let's be back. Let's break it down for our audience.
All right, so good. Let's go watch Wheel of Time.
Pete, always a pleasure.
Let's catch up after the first episode and determine if we're going to continue or not.
Take care, everybody. I'll talk to you soon.
Ethan, my pleasure as well. All right, bye, guys.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Films and Stuff. If you haven't already, please subscribe and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever podcasts are downloaded. Films and Stuff. There is no substitute.